Hi, I'm Andy. Welcome to Python Puzzles. Let's look at the if else statement. It's usually the first conditional statement beginners learn, and you'll be using it your whole career. I've used it a million times before. I'm likely to use it a million times in the future, unless I get hit with a bus. If Andy gets hit with a bus, do this. Else, do that. You can even have multiple if statements chained together. So if Andy gets hit with a bus, do this. If Andy gets hit with a car, do this. If Andy gets hit with a bike, do this. Else, I guess Andy gets to go to the shops and buy some chocolate bars. Okay, let's get puzzling. Let's start by going to the GitHub repository. The link's in the description. Click the code drop-down button and copy the HTTPS URL. I'll be using GitHub Desktop, which is a free Git GUI to clone the code. So File, Clone Repository, URL tab, paste it in there, check the local paths where I want to save it, click Clone, and if I go to my C drive and then Git repos, we can see there's the code there. So to demonstrate using the command line, if you've already downloaded Git, you can use git clone after you've navigated to the directory you want to save it into. Use git clone, paste the URL, hit enter, let it through your firewall if you need to, and there's the code. So I'll be opening this up in PyCharm. So File, Open, and it's always good. I have to refresh that there so I could pick it up. It's always good to open up the folder specifically so that PyCharm will pick up on the virtual environment files inside, and so I'll give you this pop-up that's going to help you configure everything. If I'd just chosen Git repos, I'm only going to get the virtual environment pop-up once, and it's going to cover everything, so click OK. Here's the creating virtual environment pop-up. I'm quite happy to name my virtual environment folder venv. I'm using Python 3.12, that's going to be cloned into that virtual environment, and I'm going to look at the requirements txt to download any dependencies. So click OK, and it should just do it all automatically for you, looking down at the bottom here. Creating virtual environment, installing packages. There it goes. And we can see here the virtual environment that's been selected. Let's open up main.py. So I'm going to quickly go down to the bottom, and what I'll do is I will comment out everything I'm not going to be running, and I'll just run the examples one at a time. For you to run the puzzles, you would comment out the examples and you'd uncomment out the puzzles to run them. So let's just run example A. As in all the other previous puzzles, I'm giving you some example code here, and the puzzle is going to be similar to the example. We've done 3 of them now, so you know how this works. This is kind of simulating you joining a team with existing code. You have to do things their way. So example A is kind of introducing this concept to magic numbers. This is a very important concept for developers. You basically don't want to hard code stuff into your sort of statements and your logic, because you want it to be configurable, right? So probably an example of like using a magic number would just be the print statement. What could we say here? There are 5 apples. Okay. In this example, apples is hard-coded. Every time, if there was more than 5 apples, you'd have to come in here and say, oh, 7 apples now, or there's 10 apples. It's the same as if you go apples equals 10 somewhere in your code, and then you kind of have apples, like this. So if this was a very large function, that would be buried somewhere in the code, and you'd be like, okay, I have to come in, I have to change apples to 15. So really what you'd want is you'd want just your own file, a completely separate file that has a list of all these things for the whole program. So you can just go to one file, and change everything from everywhere else. But since we are not quite at that stage yet, we're just working with single functions. But you still don't want to have magic numbers throughout the function. You don't want to be hard coding, like 15 here, right? You want answer there. And generally what you would do is you would put in a configurable section at the top of the function so it's immediately visible. So in this case, we're setting answer to 0 and it's kind of going through, but we could also just set answer to 5. I only have to come in here at the very top to see what's going on. I don't have to look through all this code and see, like, down here, answer equals 5 or whatever, right? I can just see it immediately at the top of the function. This is probably the most basic way of not doing magic numbers, okay? So I want to keep any configurable stuff at the very top of the function. I'm saying here, like this is a C# thing. This probably shouldn't be app settings.json. I've obviously copied this from a C# program. This would maybe just be settings.json or something for Python or whatever. I'll just leave that. App settings.json is quite well known in the C# community. Okay, so we're introducing the if-else statement here. I'm saying if number, and it's double equals because 1 equals is setting the value of that variable. So answer is now set to 0. There's a memory space saved with answer equals 0. But if you want to check if number is the same as answer, you use double equals sign. So we're getting the number input. If number is the same as answer, print this statement. For anything else, if it's not the same as answer, print this statement. So that's if else. It's very simple logic, but you're going to use it a lot. You're going to use it a lot in your career, okay? Trust me on that, you're going to use it. So you get puzzle A, where I'm just going to ask you to go through and write your own more complicated if statement. There's maybe going to be something called elif. So not just if, but another if statement that I changed on there. So go and Google elif Python. Okay, example B. Same kind of making, it's almost like a text-based game here. In fact, I should run example A first. Let's run example A. How many Apple users does it take to change a light bulb? 55. Now the answer's 0. Just buy a new house without any windows, guys. Dad jokes galore. Okay. So let's go down here and comment out example A. And let's run example B next. What? So, text-based game, nuclear missile launch program. Okay. Yeah, it seems a bit crazy, but you can see how this statement here is really long. I'm obviously using this elif, I'm kind of saving you there. But you've got if statements with if statements inside them. So if this is true, then you continue down and then you check if this is true, then you check if this is true. Then so it's kind of like a stepped approach. There are better ways of doing this. You'll learn in later puzzles and later tutorials. There are better ways of doing this because this can become quite verbose quite quickly. But it's good enough. You can do simple logic using this structure. So puzzle B, I'm just asking you to sort of create another sort of text-based game using the same structure, but getting you used to using the if-else statement. Example C. Let's run. I keep on forgetting to run the examples. Who are we going to nuke today, Mr. President? The secret Nazi moon base or the... Oh, that's a hard one. I don't like the Nazis. I also don't like paying taxes. I just want to see the Nazi moon base go up in flames, I think. Okay, Space Hitler will be mad though. Do you confirm the target launch? Let's click yes. Launch confirmed. bye-bye. But you can see how you've got different options there. You can make your own little text-based game. Okay, example C, comment out example B, we don't want to run that. We want to run example C. Okay, so getting the user input, variable number. Yeah, okay. So I'm sort of trying to introduce the concept of scopes there. You have to learn about scopes when using if statements, because things in here are not the same as things out here. A variable out here is accessible by everything underneath it, everything in the same line in Python. Whereas as soon as you go into an if statement in Python, everything indented can only be accessed in this little block. So this little block can access number because it's in the block above it. But if you were to write a variable in here, you could not access this variable here. You couldn't say, okay? You also couldn't do it here. Because it's not in the same scope, okay? Doesn't know what my var is. My var only exists here in this little indentation. This is a hard concept for beginners to get, and you think you're going to get it, but this is a fairly simple example. Once you start writing many functions, you're going to start running into this scoping problem. So I'd read up in block level scopes and just scopes in general with the if statement. Anyway, puzzle C, we're going to do the old guess a number game. This has been done 1,000 times before, but what I'm wanting you to do is I'm wanting you to sort of decide if the random number's +1 or -1 from whatever was chosen. So this might be a bit new to you. Give it a shot. I'm not going to spoil anything here. And let's run example C. Enter a number between 1 and 100. 34. Fantastic. You can follow simple instructions. Great. Because number equals 0 is declared outside of the if statement, I can access its final value here. So where did I write that? Yeah, so if number 0 was declared here, I would not be able to access it there, because it would only be accessible within these indentations. Okay, download the code, have a go, and I'll give you some solutions in a second. Well, I hope you attempted those puzzles. As always, the solution's available at the GitHub repo in the solution branch. Just look in main.py there to get all the answers. Okay, let's take a look at this code. So down the bottom, I'm going to comment out all the examples as I've demonstrated them. And let's get started on puzzle A. So I'll just uncomment puzzle A. Okay, so looking at the example, looks fairly simple, just an if-else statement. Write a program that asks how many dead hookers does it take to change. Oh God. I think I've read this joke like 9 times now, because I had to write this and then I had to record it. It was funny the first time, if I'm honest. It's wearing pretty thin by now, but here we go. Okay, if the user enters more than 7 dead hookers display, yeah, got to be more than 7 because my basement's still dark. If the user enters less than 7 display, well, I know it's more than 7 because my basement's still dark. If the user enters exactly 7, say, that's what I thought, I sent 7 down, but my basement's still dark. So, greater than, less than, okay. Again, we're seeing 7 a lot everywhere here, so for the magic numbers stuff, let's just put answer equals 7 right at the top, because we know that's the answer here. Let's get the user's input, and I'm just going to do everything in one line now, just to be a bit more concise. So we want the number to be an int, and inside the int we're going to cast the input. I'm going to copy and paste here because that's a lot of text. That number equals, that number dash. Okay, so that's got a number input as an integer. Now we're going to have to do an if else statement here. We're going to have to do if numbers equal to the answer. And again, I don't want to type if number equals 7, magic number, okay? If number equals 7, then I have to come through and I have to change everything all the time if it's 8 dead hookers or if it's 5 dead hookers. So number equals answer. And we can print, what we're trying to print there. If the user enters exactly 7, so I suppose you could start this off with the greater than or equal to sign, but I'm used to using if statements with the equal sign first, so it's really up to yourself. I would say the top line would be the correct answer, then every other case that's not the correct answer would be beneath it, but you would get away with doing this in any order, I suppose. And again, we've got 7 here, that's another magic number. We don't want that, we want answer in there. So we have to make this a string interpolation. And then the elif statement. So rather than you could just have a series of if statements. If this, if numbers greater than answer, but it's just more concise to kind of make this the one statement. So we'd use else if, that's what that means, else if. So if the number is greater than 7, I'll copy this, we'll display that. And we're just doing simple print statements here, but you can see how within each of these blocks you could actually start doing a lot of different logic, right? Generally what happens as a beginner is between if and else statements, or elif, you have a lot of logic. And then as you get better, you have less logic. It's less and less and less until you're back to using a line again, but that one line does a lot of stuff. Okay, so there's another statement as well for numbers less than answer, right? And this would be what we're entering. And again, I'm just going to get rid of the magic number there. Now, a lot of you might have just done else there, because that's only one left, right? Or you could have just did else and just get rid of all that. Because if it's not equal to it and it's not greater than it, then it has to be less than it, okay? That's not what I'm going to do. The reason I'm going to use an else statement after this is a basic, very basic form of error catching. And you could just something like, whoa, right? Because you're expecting the user to input a number that can be formulated and compared as equal to, greater than, less than. They might enter something weird, or they might enter null. Null would be a good one. So it might accept a null input or a none input, but then it's not going to be, we kind of know if they've entered none or null, that's an unexpected input, okay? So that's just the basic form of error catching there. It's with numbers and it just being equal, greater than, or less than, this is probably going to catch everything. But you might be entering things like text, you might be doing stuff where then you're comparing it, so it's always just good to have else as sort of like a catch-all. I'd say that's probably good enough for puzzle A. I think that would be an acceptable answer. How many dead hookers does it take to change a light bulb? 4. Well, I know it's more than 7. Okay, and let's run that again. Let's enter 99. That's a lot. that's a dangerous one. But it did answer it correctly, and if we enter 7 exactly, I'm actually curious now. If I write in none, what happens? Oh, breaks the program. So that it died before. It died at this point. It died during the conversion to int. You can't convert none to int as a string. So anyway, but this is a catch-all for in case the program sort of breaks around about here. Probably useless, but that's what I would do. So that's example A. That's puzzle A, sorry. Let's have a look at puzzle B. Okay, this is going to be a long one, isn't it? Because that was a long one. Write a program for an Italian pizza restaurant. Ask the customer if they like a pizza, a calzone or a lasagna. For all choices, ask them if they want a regular or a large. So that's an if statement inside an if statement. Then print their order confirmation. If they enter the wrong choice, tell them Tony Soprano owns the place, so you better order something. Oh, The Sopranos was just a great TV series. I rewatched it during COVID. I remember in season 1, they still did the sound effect for the punches, like from the 90s. Like someone would get punched, and go whoosh, whoosh. Which is season 2 they completely got rid of it, and it's a fantastic. You should watch The Sopranos if you've not watched it already. You can see all the flip phones in season 1 as well. Okay, give them an error message. Right. This is going to look a lot like this one. I might just copy this. At least the first part, and then we can sort of just delete everything that we don't need. So I'll have 3 print statements, and we're going to keep the numbers, right? And the first print statement is going to be, does it tell me what to say? No, so I think it was North Jersey is where the Sopranos were based. I could be wrong. What would you like? Okay, I probably will have a third option because there's 3 options: pizza, calzone, lasagna. Yeah. Okay. Python's very particular about the spacing. That's why that was underlined red, because that was out of line. The spacing determines how the program reads, because Python doesn't have like curly, like other programs would have things like that, curly braces, and it would know everything inside the curly brace belongs to this thing. Python doesn't have that. It uses indentation. So the indents are very important, and how many characters you configure to be an indented space is important. So anyway, it's not a target in this case, it's a choice, but we can keep that the same, right? That's the same. We still want an integer. We still want it to be 1, 2, or 3. So choice, and what I'll do is I'll just get rid of this stuff inside of here, and we can just do it from scratch. It's too messy. I'm afraid I might make a mistake. So okay, there's our choices. There's our if statement, if I can spell correctly. So if we order a pizza, a calzone, or a lasagna, ask them if they want a regular or large. So this is essentially going to be a repeat a repeat of essentially up there with another if statement. So, what will we call this? We can call it choice again, so meal size. And then it's not going to be a number this time because it's a regular. It could be a number. You could do the same thing. 1 equals regular, 2 equals large. I might just use a string. I might just use input and new line. I just want this to definitely be on a new line so it looks nice and neat in the console. And we'll need to tell them enter, and I'll have to escape the quotations for the R. That's a good example. Well, you could just do it. I suppose you just do that, right? You could do that, but I think just for consistency, I'll also escape the quotations around the L. So we want them to enter. Sorry guys, I've got fat fingers. We want them to enter R for regular or L for large. And it's just an if statement, right? It's and again, I'm just going to copy the variable name, just because as you see it, my fat fingers will mistype it. And we'll just go for regular, which is the standard option. We'll just print, does it tell me what to say? No. It's good that I'm continually checking the brief as well because it might have told me what to say. And we'll just do an else if. And again, we'll paste in meal size, except this time it will be equal to L. Copy that. One large pizza coming up. And then as an else statement, because they could enter anything other than R or else. So this is a better example of the else statement rather than using it with numbers. Yeah, okay, so we've actually got the error message here, haven't we? And also just, I'm kind of doing this here, I'm kind of thinking, you could have this in the example, following the example, there's no magic numbers here, but pizza, calzone and lasagna could easily be magic numbers essentially, even though they're not numbers, they're strings. You could have potentially like item 1 pizza and then have item 1 there, and then you could have item 1 there and item 1 there, right? And that way you could easily change that to hot dog or whatever, right? And then you wouldn't have to go through here and find every place that it says pizza. So that might be, if you did that, I'd say pat in the back, well done. That's probably what you should be doing. Items 1, 2 and 3. That way it's easy to add a 4th as well. But they don't do that in the example here. So I'd say up to you. I've kind of went down the path of not using it, so sorry, I'll get rid of all this. Control Z, Control Z. And basically, for choice 2 and choice 3, it's very similar. So I'm going to just copy and paste and then edit it. Now, whenever you're copying and pasting the same thing again and again and again, there's something you should know. It's called dry. I'll put this as a comment. Dry, which means don't repeat yourself. So basically, it's like an anti-pattern. What you're doing is, If you're constantly copying and pasting stuff, you should be doing it a different way where you don't have to copy and paste it. But we are way too beginner for this. So this is what a beginner would do. They would copy and paste and edit it because they can kind of understand it. They can read it. They can look at the if statement and say, okay, that does that, that does that, that does that. But as you become better at coding, you would want to use functions in here, recursion, things like this, to stop you having to continually copy and paste the same code, because it's more code to maintain as well. Alright, so choice 2 is, I believe it was a calzone. So again, copying and pasting because I used the magic numbers, but we're not, so we're copying and pasting. So get rid of everything that says pizza. It's calzone, and the third one would be lasagna. Did I spell that right? I don't think so. Probably las. There we go. For choice 3, what? Lasagna. So I think we have to get rid of this as well, because that's from the previous program. So copying and pasting, when you copy and paste a large chunk of code, there's always a chance you're going to just skip over something and leave it in there. So I think I'm just going to write, just choose 1, 2, or 3. So for a beginner, I think that would be okay. I think that would satisfy all the requirements. Again, very well done if you get rid of these and use like items or menu items or something as sort of magic numbers there. That would have been good. If you wrote this using functions or whatever, you're not an absolute beginner. Well done. Let's run that. Welcome to North Jersey Pizzeria. What would you like? It's been a while since I had a calzone actually, a folded over pizza. You know what, I'm a large person. There we go. 1 large calzone coming up. Oh, I tell you what, I love Italian food. I love it. I'm kind of on a diet just now, and I'm trying to cut out sugar and bread and stuff. And I love pizza. Pizza and chocolate's what I need. But anyway, let's go down the bottom, comment out, puzzle B, make puzzle C active. And let's take a look at this next. So we'll get an example there. Okay. If user input is not none and, so it's kind of like a large if statement there. There's 2 parts of it. This is not none is a very good way of checking the user's actually entered something, right? Because user can just hit enter, although I believe from input, if you hit enter, you will just get a blank space. So I believe if you just hit enter, this will be the only part that will trigger. None could be more like it's not been instantiated. There's been a programmatic error somewhere. This program is very simple in that this is the first line. But in larger programs, this might not be the first line. This might be line 100 that the compiler gets to. So it could potentially be not instantiated in memory for whatever logic loop problem you've created. So yeah, a more complicated if statement. An if statement is if statements again, and again another more complicated one. Again, more concise, but you have to know the difference between and or as well. So and means both this case and this case have to be satisfied to go to this line, otherwise you're going to this line. If both of these are not satisfied, if it's not greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 100, you're going to else. So for example, if it's, what could be greater than or equal to 1, less than or equal to 100? That's like just a range we're doing there. 105. If it's 105, it's greater than or equal to 1, but it's obviously greater than or equal to 100, so that would fail and it would go here. Okay. If it's minus 5, okay, it is less than or equal to 100, but it is also less than 1, so that would fail. So they both have to be. Or, if we had an or statement in here, only one of these would have to work. This is a very, very common stumbling block for beginners. You'll think you've chosen the right one, and you've probably chosen the wrong one. Okay. Number guesser. Write a program that asks the user to guess a number. Display what number am I thinking of. It's between 1 and 10. Generate a random number. We have imported import random at the top. Yep. Okay. Generate a random number between 1 and 10. Check the user input is not blank or null. Okay, so that would be that part. Convert the user's input into an integer. Easy. Check that the number's really between 1 and 10. So that's your if statement, right? That's sort of this. If it is within 1 digit of the random number generated, okay, this is new. So plus or minus 1, tell them, okay, it was out by 1, and then tell them what the number was. All right. I'm tempted to just sort of put a number as the randomly generated number sort of right at the top, because it's sort of like a random number. It's going to be used throughout the program. So have it in this sort of config section, because it's between 1 and 10 just now, but it could easily be between 1 and 100 or 1 and 20. It can change. And then after that, get the user input. And I think I've got the text there. Put that in. Again, 1 and 10. These are magic numbers again, because if this changes, so does this. So you could have like something like that. And then maybe a higher num for this. So you could change everything in 3 lines. You don't have to go through the rest of the code, okay? But for just readability, I'm just going to leave it like that because it's such a short program. And then, okay, next would be sort of the guess, right? So the user's going to make a guess. I would want to instantiate that outside of the if block, because we're going to have a multi-layered if statement here, and I would want the guess to be available through every part of the if statement. So I'm just going to instantiate it to 0, and then have an if statement, copy and paste for the variable name. And it's just going to be the same as the example here. Is not none and. Oh, got to watch for spaces as well. Does not equal space. So like I said, I believe it's, if you hit enter for input, I believe it produces the empty space. I don't believe it produces none. So then we get the guess as an integer, and we convert it. And then after that, we then have to use this sort of if statement range, don't we? Because we have to check if it's between 1 and 10. So if guess is greater than or equal to 1, and guess is less than or equal to 10. Okay, so then we do our logic, and we have an else. It would be a bit more error message, wouldn't it? Do you see how? Sorry, I put the quotation marks. Now, do you see how the numbers 1 and 10 are appearing everywhere again. So if I was to change this, I'd have to look through the code and change 10 here, 10 there, 10 there. So this is a good example of why you should probably have a configuration variable there. So if guess is correct, if guess equals number, do we have a success message? No, I'll tell you what, I'll just write bingo. And then it'd be an else if. Yeah, but an else if the guess is either side of that number. So we can do this sort of in line here. We can go if guess equals number plus 1, or guess equals number minus 1. And then we could have, what was that statement we're supposed to be printing? So print f blah. What? Did everything wrong there, guys? I'm rushing through it. Okay. Didn't like the fact it wants a space in between the plus sign and the minus sign. You could also, I think that's more readable to write it like that, but you could be like, you could give this a variable name as well. You could be something like, I don't know, you could call this upper num or something. And then you could, I don't know, wherever you want to put it. You could have something like that, right? But that makes it less readable to me. So I'm just going to have all that in line there, because it's you can see from a glance what it does. And there's also, I like to have an else statement in there just in case. It's a very basic form of error checking. Wrong, it was number. Okay. Yes, I think that would be acceptable. I could do another else statement here. So this would fail if it's none or blank space. So I could just say, I know that it's going to be one of them, so I could just say error, just enter blank space. I think that's good enough. I mean, that's fairly complicated logic. If we look at how far we've come from puzzle 1, we're now using long, complicated, nested if statements. We're checking either side of numbers. But inside the if statement, at the moment, it's just print. We're not doing anything fantastic inside them. We've highlighted again and again and again that you should be using configuration. You should be using variables and not magic numbers. But I wanted to make that readable for you, because if I started changing that to lower and this to upper, as an absolute beginner, you might just find the whole thing not readable, whereas in text, for an absolute beginner, this is readable. Plus it's only like a few lines of code. But I just want to really make you aware, don't have things like this in here. Use a variable and keep it at the top of the function. So you can kind of see, going through these puzzles, if you're an absolute beginner, if you went for a coding interview, the kind of things people would pick up on. For example, if you did this, they give you a little code puzzle to do at your job interview, and they start seeing you writing things like that, and they'll be like, oh, wait a minute, this guy doesn't know about magic numbers. This is going to be really hard to maintain this code. And then they would ask you questions about it. They'd be like, okay, so you've written in 1 and 10 there, and you'd be like, oh, Andy told me about magic numbers. I don't know what I was thinking. This code will be really hard to maintain, and then at least it kind of gets you over that hurdle. You can say that's maybe a bit of pressure, but if you can produce really good code, it stands out. At a glance, they'll know what level you're at by the code you're writing and how complicated or indeed how simple it is. So let's run that. Let's try 11, see what happens. Error. Okay, I have to do it between 1 and 10. And every time now we're having to run this, I'll show you in later puzzles how to make this run automatically if you enter the wrong sort of thing. It can continually ask you until you enter a number between 1 and 10. So we'll enter 8. Wrong, it was 4. I'm going to do this a couple of more times, just pick random numbers, so we can test this case where it's going to be +1 or -1 for whatever the guess is. I'll do 3. Oh yeah, okay, bingo, yeah. Close, out by 1, number was 2. So let's see if I can get a success case. Just hit 5 a few times. I mean, if I keep sticking to 5, it's got to be 5 eventually, right? Let's make the random number not so random. Let's make it 5. Let's play it again. And this time it will be 5, right? Because we've cheated. Hit enter. Yeah, bingo, correct guess. So that was the if else statement. I hope you had some fun. I hope you learned a few things. And you're really beginning to progress now. We're getting a bit more complicated. The puzzles are becoming a bit more complicated, a bit longer, a bit more complex. I think when I learned this stuff way back at the beginning, one of the first sort of little projects I had for myself was like a text-based computer game. I think it was like a mafia game, and it was just all if-else statements and like numbers and variables. So this is Tony's crew. Do you want to go to war with Tony's crew? And you could either answer like yes or no, and it would just take you through the little fictional world. But what it does do is it reinforces your learning, and it gets the if else statement and complicated little bits of logic into your head, and then you come across things that you wouldn't have thought about otherwise. You come across problems that you have to solve. So that's really what I'm trying to stimulate you with doing these puzzles. Hopefully, as we go on, you're going to keep on encountering just little things that you don't know how to do, and you have to go away and research them. And then it's just getting used to that process, because that's what a development job is. It's just big problems. It's just big problems you have to break down, and then you have to assign different problems to different team members, and they have to break them down, and then you have to bring it all together. But it can be simplified as just doing little puzzles, just doing your own little projects. So have fun, and I'll see you next episode.